child was named Angela, for the Angelus which rang the midnight hour, the new year, the minute of her coming, and because she was a little angel anyway. Love her as in childhood, though feeble, old and grey, for you'll never miss a mother's love till she's buried beneath the clay.
The memory that lasts with me is the one in the Limerick school. We sat at the same desk, and he came to school one morning, and he had a terrible toothache, and he was in pain, and his head was down, and finally the master asked him, "McCourt, what's the matter?" "Sorry," he said, "a terrible pain in my teeth." The master said to him, "Go down to the dispensary and talk to the dentist there. Tell him I sent you down and take a look at you." McCourt left. He was back in about a half hour, 45 minutes. His hand over his mouth, and sat down again and put his head on the desk. And for about an hour, he just sat with the blood in a pool on the floor. You know, you wouldn't see things like that anymore. But that's, you know, to watch him with his head down like that, losing that blood was just, I've always remembered it.
Meeting him in his American Forces uniform, when he was in furlough, if that's the proper word, from his duty in Spain and Germany. And he came to stay in our house in Ballymena in Northern Ireland. And then I pinched one of the lovely insignia crossed rifles on his lapel of his uniform. He never forgave me for that.
When he came to America, I remember his leaving was like a day like this. You know, the rain, it was miserable. And it was just an empty feeling going back to the house with him not being there. You know, he was a definite presence there. But he was somebody that I always, he was one of my heroes. I always looked up to him. He had more courage than anybody I know. He was totally fearless, you know.
He was serious. He was always dedicated, kind of austere and responsible for himself and for us too. He was always a leader in so many respects. He was the substitute surrogate since our father left when I was a year old, so I never really knew him. Never saw him again. I saw him again when I was 15. So I depended a lot on my brothers and my growing up.
There was a fellow named Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a senator in New York, said it's no use being Irish unless you know the world is eventually going to break your heart. And that was, I think, Frank's makeup in a way that he always expected, that there was going to be a divine banana skin thrown in the way of his progress. And so there was that aspect of him. And then there was the other aspect was of the teacher, the generous sharing of his own knowledge, of his own intellect, his own enthusiasm for for learning and for literature and joy in words.
I knew he was a hurt person, you know, and he wanted to give this emotion out and what he felt when he was growing up and whatever. And he did it so artistically. Of course, a lot of people didn't agree with what I wrote, but I felt there was a lot of sadness. A book you pick up and put down and you wouldn't read it just straight through. I left it down a few times, picked it up again, because it was emotional, very emotional. They were very funny. I mean, brilliant writer, great storyteller. I mean, he well deserved his prize. Fantastic.
He was very good to me because he helped out every way he possibly could on the tours I conduct, and recommended people in America that if they come to Ireland, go to Limerick, go and meet Mick O'Donnell, and he'll bring you on the Angela's Ashes tour. And he told me he could hardly walk down Broadway and meeting people saying, "Oh, Frank, we've been with Mick O'Donnell in Limerick and he did the tour with us and all that and all." Fantastic. That's how good Frank McCourt, God rest him, was to me.
Frank, you had to get to Frank to be friends with him, you know. And of course he took everyone as his own, you know. But I don't think he'd follow up you to ask you for a drink.
I think Frank grew to love Limerick. You know, I think it was, for many years, of course, there was a chip on the shoulder about it. Not to mention that, you know, he really didn't want to talk about his past. You know, going to New York University, you know, it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't sexy to have grown up in poverty in an Irish city in the 1930s and 40s. So I think it was a lot of repressed kind of, I wouldn't say anger, but some resentment. But when he would come to Ireland, I came with him the first time in 1990, and there was always a kind of an exhalation of breath, as though, you know, here I am. You know, he really loved Ireland, though he would never call himself wholly Irish or wholly American. He sort of straddled the hyphen of Irish American, and sometimes even said, you know, maybe I exist somewhere over the Atlantic.
Oh, he knew the blood and guts of the place, you know. He absorbed more of it than any of us, I think. And he loved it, pure and simple. I mean, the laughs. There was a wealth of characters around at the time, you know. Like my Uncle Ab was one, and Frank loved him. Ab was a guy who used to sell newspapers on the street. And it was just, we were just telling a story about him this afternoon, just about the time television came out. He used to walk from the leader office all the way out to Toomagate distributing his newspapers. So he got out to one of the bars out there in Toomagate, and as usual he'd sell at least a dozen or two newspapers there, but all the guys are sitting at the bar watching TV. So and he's going around, he said, "Jesus, nobody wants a paper anymore." And somebody said, "We don't need those papers anymore, we can watch the news on TV." But my Uncle Ab said, "But can you wipe your arse with a TV?"
He did, but who'd love it when you get bumped around like that? Mother and father dies, or your father shags off, or something like that, you know. You're lost in between, you know. And you're coming to school like this, and everybody is down and out, you know. And of course there's always rain anyway. But there's one thing about Limerick, even through the misery, it is a wonderful city. I always did, and I was very proud of it. I couldn't, always my heart was here. You know, across the water, even though I was married for, the most of 30 years, I still love to come back to Limerick.
In a way, he did. It wasn't so, yes, I suppose you could say, well, his own description of it, whether you love it or not, I mean, my own feelings about it are a combination of anger and resentment and delight that I grew up here, because it's quite an extraordinary place. And there's a colour and a character here that is no place else. There's a humour here, and that has no other place in the world. And I've been a lot of places, know that they don't have it. There's the kind of a Limerick slyness where you think you've gotten away with something and somebody slips a verbal stiletto right into your ribs and they fuck you. They gotcha.
We are of Limerick. We are Limerick, and Limerick is us. There's no separation. It's not like you can divorce Limerick any more than Limerick can divorce us. We used to joke when we were in school, the poet John Keats breathes there a man with soul so dead that never to himself hath said, this is my own, my native land. That's how it is. I had probably a somewhat better experience in Limerick, because when I was 12 we moved out of the lane and moved up to Janesborough. So although in talking with Malachy the other day I realised we were first generation in Limerick. We didn't have the deep-rooted connections that other people have, because my mother was from outside Limerick, my father was from the north, from Antrim. So we didn't have the connections.
When you go back to that time now, talking about the bad times of it, there weren't bad times with the people. You could go way out of your house there in the morning and go off anywhere you liked, and you could leave your door open. There's no one would go in like. There were that time, there were the good times that way like. That there were no robberies or no nothing like that. You could leave your doors open and go up. You know? They were the good parts of it. Do you know what I mean? And everyone was happy, even though there were poor times.
The books said it all. And he had his enemies here, or people disapproved, didn't they? Some. But most people would have accepted it as a magnificent portrayal of the horrors they went through growing up in pure poverty. I mean, it was horrendous upbringing they had. And then to achieve what he achieved in life was magnificent. And he was a Limerick man. So Limerick should be proud of him.
He led an enthusiastic life. He didn't lose his enthusiasm for it. He didn't lose any sort of... he had a faith, I think, really, that underneath it all, that would be okay.
Frank did an awful lot for Limerick in the sense that promoting Limerick today, the new European city that we have, he promoted that. Also, of course, he promoted the old Limerick. And this is what people don't really appreciate it. Probably they don't know. If they did know, they would appreciate him, of course, a lot more. He did do quite a lot for Limerick.
It's one of the things I think that's first in recognising Limerick. I think it's a very deep, thoughtful people, and they're very good people in Limerick. And Frank, I think, learned that sooner than I did. He wrote about it and then put Limerick on the map.
You know, I would say enjoy it, Frank, because you earned it. I really would. And I think he would agree. He worked very hard.